ERRA is one of the most exciting metal bands active today. Today I'm going to try to recreate the main riff from their song Cure using only MIDI instruments. Alright, here we are in the session where I'm going to program my VST instruments, and I've already programmed the drums for this riff. But let's now get right into programming the rhythm guitars for this riff. And for the VST, I am using the new Odin 3, which the guys at Solemn Tones were kind enough to send over to me. It has some great features, which I'm planning to make a video about in the future, where I'm going a bit in depth. But for this video, I'm just going to use it and you will hear just how amazing it sounds. I'm gonna start with the first note of the riff, which should be a D sharp if I'm not mistaken. Right now, I only have the nameless on it, and I also have an EQ where I am removing some of the very top highs, removing some mids and boosting a bit of lows.
A few moments later.
Okay, now I finished programming the guitars and this is what I got. And here on the high notes, you can really hear the difference between playing on the 8th string and playing on another one. So I will switch back to auto mode for string selector, and you will really hear the difference and also see on the fretboard where you're actually playing. As compared to. Together with the drums, here's where we're at. What I found a bit tricky was programming all of these different bends, but I've tried my best to make them as accurate as possible. For the bass, it should be exactly the same, but I'm also going to force the string. For this, I am using Jim Bass 2 by Submission Audio. I have affiliate links in the description below for both the Odin 3 and the Jim Bass 2 if you're interested in picking it up and supporting the channel in the process. Alright, so the next thing I like to do is to layer the guitars and bass with a synth growler. So I'm just gonna copy the bass up to the growler track. I usually do it one octave above just to get a bit more audibility. If I have it on the D sharp 0 here, it sounds very, very low and muddy. As compared to. But I don't want the high notes in the synth. I only want those in the bass and the guitar, so I'm going to remove all of the high notes. I also have a stereo bass track, which is the Nolly bass from Get Good Drums. I could quickly go over how I get this stereo bass sound. It's using the little altar boy 50% with the pitch and formant all the way down. It's using Spiff just for some added pick attack. We have the Gejira, which is using the phaser, and also the amp, which is going into Saturn 2, which I'm using essentially as an IR. Next, it's just a gate to keep it super, super tight. I am using these plugins from Soundtoys. It's also the micro shift at the end, which is making this super wide sound, which I'm really after for this tone. I have some tape saturation, just shaping it a lot with EQ. I want a really gnarly sound for this tone. I don't want it to sound pristine at all. And just some leveling with the distressor, not doing a ton. All right, cool. So with the programmed instruments, this is where we're at currently. So the next step is now to export these from my pre-pro session into my main mixing session, where I'm also going to add some additional production layers. While we're waiting for the tracks to export, I am going to upload the stems and the MIDI file for this project on my Patreon if you're interested in picking it up there. Joining my Patreon as a member is also the best way you can directly support the channel. All right, cool. Now we're in the mixing session, and here we're gonna do some additional mixing as well as adding some little sprinkles of production. So this is where we're at with the drums and the bass instruments. The first step is going to be to add the rhythm guitars to this one. I'm gonna start with adding some tape saturation to the rhythm guitars. And next I'm going to mix it a bit along with the drums. I find mixing rhythm guitars initially only with the drums is super helpful because the drums are framing the entire mix, so you get the lowest lows and the highest highs. So it gives you a great reference for where the guitars can sit in the mix. Let's start with some bass mint. I absolutely love this plugin for rhythm guitars. Next, I'm gonna use some Soothe just to remove some harshness. Now, this is an optional step, but it's something that I've started doing recently using the Ozone 11 stabilizer plugin. It's removing some harshness in cut mode, which I find sounds really good on rhythm guitars. I'm gonna gauge the delta here, so you will hear exactly what it's removing. So just the noise is immediately removed from the rhythm guitars. But it's doing it in a really transparent way. It's doing similar things than Soothe, but just with a more broadband approach, I would say. Next, let's do some EQ. This is where most of the heavy lifting will be done in the guitar tone. Okay, so I removed some harshness, added some mids back in, and just removed some spikes here, which I swept through with drums to see what poked out. I think it sounds a little bit more balanced now. Final step is just to add a tad of compression to the guitars. But yeah, how good does this virtual guitar sound? It's crazy. Okay, I'm pretty happy now with the mix for the main instruments. Now I'm going to add a bit of extra sparkle on top as I like it. So the first thing I'd like to add is some percussion. And for that, I'm using a free sample library from Spitfire Audio called Labs. This is absolutely amazing. If you're making music in any shape or form, please download this free library now. I use it all the time. There is not a single production I make that doesn't use Labs in one shape or another. And one thing that Labs has is some great percussion sounds. What I usually like to do for more upbeat riffs like this is to add some shakers. I'm just going to program it and try to make it sound a little bit human. It's not super necessary to go all in on this because it's going to be barely audible in the final mix. I'm going to start by just duplicating it because I want one pair of shakers on the right and one pair of shakers on the left. So here I know that there is another shaker sound. So there is no cancelling out. I have a different sound, which sounds like that. So I'm just going to do that all the way left and this one all the way right. And then I just like to level this together with only the drums. I want it barely audible, but just this little sparkle on top, which is driving the riff forward. Next, I am looking for some synth action. I want a kind of gated synth sound on top of this riff, which is going like da 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 da. I also like the movement this creates in riffs usually. So I'm going to use the transgate from Slate Digital, and I'm just going to play around with it to see what sounds cool. So now we've created some rhythmic interest here with the percussion and also the gated synth. Cool, I think we are done and we are ready for the final comparison. Please let me know in the comments what you thought of it. Did you take any techniques away from this video that you're going to try in your own productions? I want to know. Like I said before, if you want to pick up the Odin Free, do so by using my affiliate link in the description. Without further ado, here is the final version of the Cure riff by ERRA, but 100% MIDI. Enjoy.